Welcome back to episode, I don't know what episode we are on, of Negro Please. I'm your host, Dallas Scott, my co-host, Hollywood Huff. I think this is number 9 or 10. I'm not for sure.
I don't know. That sounds good.
Yeah. This is a show where we try to offend your senses. That's just the logistics of it, right? Like, and by offending your senses, I mean hopefully bring some common sense to a situation. Man. On Monday, I thought, oh man, it's a slow week. It's gonna be hard to find some stuff to talk about. And then Tuesday and Wednesday rolled around. It was like, woo, there's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's talk some of this stuff. Like, I'm gonna be braggadocious about, because we were on this way before anybody else in the country, and now they're catching up and they want to act like this is breaking news. But let's start with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
His family convened a coroner. Now, I understand his family paid this guy, the medical examiner, to come and examine the body, but he's like, yeah, nah, this isn't suicide, bro. These are more like choking marks, not self-strangulation marks.
Yeah.
So let the conspiracy theories begin, but
well, yeah, I think anybody with kind of half a brain, and even myself, like, I'm the most anti-conspiracy. Like, people are always like, oh, it's a conspiracy. And I'm like, it ain't a conspiracy. Dude fell down the steps. He's dead. Like, that's me. I'm the guy who's like, it ain't a conspiracy. And even when this guy died, I was like, man, hold up. No way. Like, you know, I thought there was a little bit of like, you know what, man, I could see him killing himself. Like, now he's got to deal with, even if he beats the case, there's shame and yada, yada, yada. So even I was still kind of 50-50, but I was just like, yeah, it wouldn't shock me. You know, all the people that are involved, the high level people, all the money involved here. He probably got killed, you know, but I wasn't like losing no sleep over it. But now I'm like, yeah, he got killed.
So like, I'm with, like, I am the I don't like conspiracy theories. I think they're just a waste of people's time.
Yeah.
But I've been on board with the conspiracy theories of this since it started. Quite frankly, I just felt like this guy had too much dirt on too many people. Right?
Yeah.
Like, for him to hang himself, he's on suicide watch in jail and he hangs himself. Like,
yeah, that's the big like hold up.
How do you like when you're on suicide watch, you don't get shoelaces.
Right.
You don't get a belt.
Right.
You don't get anything to hang yourself with.
Right.
So
yeah.
All of a sudden this guy hangs himself in a cell while he's on suicide watch.
I think that's the thing that like most people get. It's not like it was just like, you know, he was put in like solitary confinement or something else. He was on suicide watch, meaning this guy might kill himself. Your number one job, Mr. Security Guard, is to make sure he doesn't kill himself. And a day or 2 days later, yeah, he killed himself. Yeah. How? Yeah.
I'm actually all aboard on all the conspiracy. I just feel like he just has, there's actually a video out of, it's so crazy, of his island. Like, these two journalists like snuck on the island and like ran around the island and took videos until security found them and they had to run and get off the island. But it's actually kind of a dope island. Like, and you could see like where like there's some secret stuff going on in this island. Like, I don't want to go too much on that, because I mean, honestly, the guy, I'm glad he's dead, because he needed to be off this planet if he's doing this stuff to little girls and boys. But unfortunately, we're never going to get the names.
We're not going to get the rest of the information.
What I want to know is, how come this guy wasn't like every dude in the movies that was like, if anything ever happens to me, send this to the New York Post? Like, where's his secret file that's going to be sent to somebody?
Yeah.
Or did his secret file get redirected to somebody so it didn't get out there?
There's probably a bunch of people whose names are not important enough for the media to dig up, and they probably are missing as we speak. You know what I mean? I refuse to believe, like, if we're going to go into the conspiracy of it, let's go all the way. Epstein wasn't the only person killed here. Right. You know what I'm saying? No. Like, I'm pretty sure there's some other people who are no longer with us. Some information that just got burned and shredded and is just gone. Like, you don't run a whole island. You know what I'm saying? Like, without some information. Like, even you got like Pablo Escobar, like probably the biggest drug dealer ever, had paperwork. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody
knows something. Right?
Yeah, everybody has a paper trail. Like, you don't run like an organization like this without having
an
something.
email,
Yeah,
something. Right,
somebody's got something somewhere.
How did you communicate? Morse code
right,
or something?
Yeah. How did people know they could go there?
Right,
you know,
right.
So, there's so much going on here.
Yeah. So enough with the Epstein, but we just thought we had to bring it up because we talked about it in the past. This one is kind of an interesting one to me. Nathaniel Jones is a high school football coach at St. Augustine's High School in Louisiana. He was fired. Why was he fired? The reason we're bringing this up because it's the third week in a row. We had the kid in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Where the teacher used the N-word talking to him.
Right.
The security guard last week where they used the N-word, but he said, don't call me the N-word.
He said, don't call me an N-word. Right.
Which is a completely different way of using the word. He wasn't. And then this guy, Nathaniel Jones, he actually has, we've all played football or sports before, and you have that chant, 1, 2, 3, go Raiders, or go
right.
Vikings, whatever. But they have a chant that says, you understand, all I got is 2 hands, 2 pads, knock this N bleep S bleep loose.
Right.
He's wrong on this one, right? Like, he deserves to get fired on this one.
This to me is so unacceptable. It's unacceptable, period. I don't care what school it was at or where it was at. It's just it's an unacceptable chant.
Right.
Now here's the thing that takes it over the top, and which I'm glad he was fired because he clearly doesn't get the point. This is at an all boys, historically black Catholic school, right? The standard, that should be the standard at the minimum. Like, we don't allow the N-word here, like, period, you know? And and here's my biggest thing about it is this is a historically black Catholic school. When you have like the HBCUs, right? Historically black colleges, right? Historically black high school, whatever it is. The reason that it's
shout out to Alcorn State. My daughter goes to school there.
All right. This is historically black generally means back in the day when black people weren't allowed to go to regular colleges or just the normal colleges because they were black. Historically black doesn't mean that these were the black schools. This meant these were the schools where black people were allowed.
Yep.
These were the schools that racism was not tolerated. Right? So these schools were fundamentally founded on the fact, like, look, we have a higher standard here. You know what I mean? Like, we do things a little bit different because the rest of the world doesn't like you. The rest of the world doesn't love you. Here, you will be treated as an equal, right? With that being said, to use the N-word in any way, shape, or form here, it's got to be completely unacceptable.
Because it's completely against anything the school was founded on.
Exactly, right? And then you have, of course, young boys who, if they're doing this chant in the locker room, then they think that, oh, it's okay to use this word outside of here, right? There's another profane word, the S word, right?
Right.
Nobody even cares about that, right? It's because that's just cussing. That's not why he was fired. Right. You know what I mean? He was fired because they used the N word, because the N word is more than just a curse word.
Hey,
right?
Want to give a shout out to everybody showing us love on Facebook right now. Thank y'all for hanging out and watching the watch party. There's something, I'm glad you brought up HBCUs real quick, because you'll hear from time to time, why do you guys get black colleges, right? Why can't we integrate those black colleges? And this is, to me, this is funny because there are white people who go to HBCUs.
Yeah.
And they're smart white people.
Yeah.
And the reason they're smart is because, did you know that if you are not black, you can go to an HBCU for free?
Ooh, I didn't know that.
All those minority scholarships that black people get for going to white non-HBCU schools,
HBCUs,
you get those for going to an HBCU.
Right.
Mind-blowing, right? Like, you want to complain about the school, but you've never actually taken the step to see that as a non-black person, you are entitled to a ton of scholarships, and you can go to HBCU for free.
Right.
And you're gonna get a quality education.
Right.
It's not like you're getting less of an education than going anywhere else. So before people start complaining about HBCUs and they shouldn't have black colleges, know that if you're not black, that's a free education.
Yeah.
I know I have about 5-6 friends that are white that went to HBCUs so they could go to school for free.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't afford to go to school. And then somebody told them that they wouldn't do their research, and they were like, no, like, I can legit go to this black college for free. I don't have a problem with black people. I can go hang out with them all day and get my stuff done.
Right. And here's what people don't understand. The college wasn't built. Like, when it first opened, they didn't call it historically black. Right?
No, right.
It was just called Morehouse, right? You know what I mean? Or Spelman or whatever, right?
Right.
And the reason why it's now historically black is because throughout history, black people went there, not because this is the school for black people, because they could not get into the Harvards.
Right.
They couldn't get into UCLA.
And not because they weren't smart enough. It's because they didn't give them those opportunities.
They simply saw that, oh, this person is black. They are not allowed here.
Right.
So there were schools built that said, look, we don't care who you are, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. We will accept you and you can come here. And it just so happened the way this country was built, the majority of the people here were either black or white. Right. So the black people went to these colleges. Hence now they are called historically black colleges.
And that's why they are predominantly in the South and on the East Coast.
Right. Exactly.
This is one of these ones that's going to make people mad, but I'm okay with that. Federal judge this week. District Judge Myron Thompson ruled that these bans on abortions from Alabama and Georgia and other states, he says you can't do them. He said it contravenes clear Supreme Court precedent and violates patients' privacy. Basically, all these really strict abortion bans, they're blocked right now. This is going to go back to the Supreme Court, which is a little conservative right now.
Yeah.
But this is one of my issues. Okay, first of all, being pro-choice does not mean that you're for abortion. It just means it's none of my damn business.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Like what somebody else does with their life, I'm not in their shoes. I can't try to understand what they're going through, so I shouldn't be able to make that decision for them.
Right.
Right. Personally, I would never have an abortion or ask a woman to have an abortion of my child. Let's clear that up.
Right.
However, I am pro-choice. I don't know what your situation is. You're a 14-year-old girl and you've been raped and you say, hey, I don't want to carry this baby. I get that. I understand why you do not want to go through a life of trauma. But again, that's not my decision to make for you. You have to make that decision.
Right.
And you should be allowed to make that decision.
And that's only 1% of the abortions, by the way. I'm turning my mic back on.
No, it's fine. It's fine. But
because people always bring that up when they bring up abortion, and they bring up like the lowest percent of what the case would be, why they support it. They always bring up like, well, because if this happened, it's like, okay, that is 1% of all the abortions. That's what happens. Most of the time, it's just people don't want to be responsible for a kid that they made.
Right. Right.
So,
but
my mic's off now.
No, but your mic is fine. Keep it
up. That's.
Even if it's that they don't want to be responsible for a kid they made, that's their choice. Would you rather have them make that choice then, or bring a kid into the world, don't feed him, we find out a year later that he's been locked in a closet, unfed and unkept, and now the child's going to die, the parents are going to prison for child abuse. Like, we see those cases all the time too. So like, there are some people who know they shouldn't be parents. Yeah. And the world knows they shouldn't be parents. So maybe they don't be parents. And I know there are adoption, like you could put a baby up for adoption and stuff like that. Yeah. But again, those aren't my choices to make.
And that's where I'm like, because I'm totally against abortion. Like, I'm one of the people who think like, yeah, abortion should be illegal. But then you hear these certain situations, and and my issue is there are a lot of things in this country that need to be fixed. And part of it is like, people always say like, oh, we'll have the baby, then put it up for adoption. Our adoption system is terrible in this country. Like, the foster care system is horrible. Like, it's the things you have to do to adopt a child are ridiculous. You know, even if somebody can have $1 million and say, you know what, I'm going to go and adopt all these kids and I got somebody to take care of them and they're going to live these great lives. Like, the process you still have to go through is it's above and beyond what will be considered reasonable, you know, accommodations for these kids who, in other words, would probably be just like living in a shelter, which has less standards than what they need you to have to adopt this child. Right.
Right.
There are those situations where, you know, someone is raped or some kid or, you know, something happens where I'm also like, you know, I'm empathetic, right, for that person to be in that situation. And there are plenty of times I go, you know what, maybe abortion should be legal in the situation, right?
That's
you
what
know,
we call the Huff, where you can see both sides of an argument.
I can see both sides of this argument, even as a Christian. On one hand, abortion is murder. I've had someone explain to me, like, look, God gives us a choice. So people should be allowed to have a choice. Like, as Christians, we can't take away someone's God-given choice. I've heard that side of the argument as well. Both of these sides of the argument make me stop and think like, wow. At the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's, man, I can control my actions. I can not go get random women pregnant You know what I mean?
Right,
To put him in that situation, right? Me and my wife, obviously, we have 3 kids. We don't believe in abortion. We don't want to have any more children. But if she got pregnant, we're going to have a 4th child, right? So for me personally, I would never have an abortion. I would never, you know what I mean, encourage somebody to have an abortion. But at the same time, I don't walk in their shoes. You know, I can't.
Like, it's not something,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's not something that
I want to go through.
It's one of those things I'm just like, you know what? I don't even want to talk to y'all about this because my views are not, it's not a decision for me to make for you. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I can give you all the advice, all the wisdom that I have on it, but at the end of the day, it's your decision. You know what I mean? It's something that you have to do because after it happens, whether you keep this child or not keep the child, you have to live with this.
Right.
Right? So whether you believe like life starts when the baby's born, or if you believe that life starts at conception, whatever, at the end of the day, you have to live with this. And I don't think this is a decision that should be made through politics or through people just forcing their beliefs on you.
I should not be able to.
You understand what I'm saying?
I don't know you.
Like,
I'm not paying any of your bills. I'm not taking care of this child for you. I should have no right to tell you how to do these things. And again, being pro-choice doesn't mean that you're anti-abortion. Right. It means that it's none of my damn business.
Yeah.
This has been such a good week.
I know, right?
Let's talk about Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live. I've said this forever, and not because I'm a broke, struggling comedian. Comedians are off limits when it comes to getting your feelings hurt. Comedians are off limits when it comes to offending people. Because that's part of the job, right?
Yeah.
Even Bill Cosby offended people, right? Like with his jokes. It's part of the job. And the reasons comedians are funny is because they say the things that the rest of us can't say or that we want to say. And then unless you're a comedian that specifically targets one group of people and just does nothing but go after that group of people, in my opinion, you should be off limits. As long as your jokes are well-rounded and you're talking about gays, straights, blacks, whites, Latinos, Asians, whatever it is,
right,
then you're off limits. And first of all, we know what Saturday Night Live is, right? Like, we know what's going on in Saturday Night Live. Like, we understand what kind of show this is. It's not like it's only been on the air for 3 months, right? This show is like the longest running show in television history.
Yeah.
So we know the jokes are going to be offensive. Whether you're right wing or left wing, there's going to be some offensive joke in there. Michael, and I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, Che. He goes on a rant about Kanye's, because Kanye lost his damn mind. We're going to get into that in a minute.
Right.
He almost had me fooled, Kanye. He almost had me fooled this week. So, and this is where this really bothers me. So Che's joke went like this. In a riff about Kanye West album, he said, the singer was turning into an old white lady. He elaborated. I mean, he used to be one of the coolest dudes, black dudes on earth. Now he's showing up to events in sweatpants and orthopedic sneakers, listening to Kenny G and trying to get black people to like Trump. It's like, how long before this guy changes his name to Kathy? That wasn't the offensive part, right?
Right.
Everybody was okay with him saying that Kanye West should be called an old white woman, right? And it should identify as that.
Right.
Where the problem came in is when he came and he says, now you might think I'm crazy. About 5 years ago, there's a fella named Bruce, and he moved to Calabasas. People are offended that he misidentified Caitlyn Jenner / Bruce Jenner. I'm only using the / Bruce Jenner for those of you who have been in a time capsule for the last 6 months and don't understand what's going on.
Right.
And he called her fella because she used to be a man. Now she's a female. And this is apparently now hate speech. So if you say it about a straight person and refer to them as somebody of the opposite sex, that's okay. But if you say it about somebody who's transgender and refer to them about the sex they used to be, then that's not okay. When did we become such an offensive, pussified country?
Look, it's just gotta stop. Like people find anything to be offended about. Look, I'm a Christian, right? And I believe in Jesus Christ. Okay. There are plenty comedians who make jokes about Christianity, right?
Oh, tons.
Some of them are funny. Okay. Like there have been times where I was literally sitting there like, I don't know if I should just fall out of my chair laughing or just be mad right now. But there's a human part of me that is just like, I don't care. That was funny. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because as Christians, we do some stupid stuff sometimes, right? So there are, I can understand a person being offended and I can understand it being funny. However, even in times where I think like, wow, that was pretty offensive, if they go off talking about other things as well and continually making jokes about things that are not Christianity, I'm no longer offended because it's like this person making jokes about everything.
Right.
They joke about everything, whether they
and
whether
how
they
can
get
you
it or
be
not.
offended by the Christian joke if you're not offended by the racist joke?
Exactly. So if somebody's making jokes, right, and you're a Christian, and they make a Muslim joke, and it's the funniest thing you've ever heard, and then they make a Christian joke, and now you're mad. The problem's not the comedian there. The problem is you. Right. And you're choosing to be offended. Okay. Now there's a difference between being offensive and there's a difference between you just being offended.
Right.
And in most cases, when a comedian is making a joke, they are making a joke from a neutral standpoint. Right. They're not, it's not that they have such just a strong bound personal belief that like he didn't make this joke because like, oh, he hates transgenders and he thinks all, you know what I mean? Like it shouldn't even go into that. It's just a man who's like, cause let's face it, like he said a couple years ago, Caitlyn Jenner was a man. Right. And from what I understand, still has man parts.
I don't know if he does or does not. I don't. Does he? Does anybody actually? I thought he had the full.
I never heard that he did everything.
Right.
But
I'll have to Google that real
even
quick.
if he did, he's still a man.
Well,
so
yeah, exactly.
There are two things for me about this. A, as a struggling wannabe comedian, you know how many open mic nights I've gone to, and the person or a couple people in front of me have told a joke, and I'm like, well, there goes that joke for me tonight. Yeah, because it's similar. You know what I mean? It's a similar topic.
Yeah.
So that tells me that we all think it's the same. You know what I mean? Like, as much as we think we're different than other people, when another guy is up there and we see something very similarly, and I'm like, damn, his punchline was better than mine. Like,
yeah.
So it's not like that person's the only person that thinks this, right? When comedians tell those jokes. The other thing, when you put yourself out there in the public, you are open to public interpretation.
Of course.
We have decided to make this show a public show.
Right.
If people want to attack what we say on this show or come after us for what we say on the show, we knew that going in.
Right.
You know what I mean? When you become a celebrity couple, you know going into that. Jennifer Aniston, Brad Pitt, you know that you're going to be the most watched people in the world.
Exactly.
Because you're now the celebrity couple. When Caitlyn Jenner made the decision to tell the world that she was changing sexes, you make yourself the most visible in the world.
That's part of the reason why people come out.
Right.
And it's to help other people who are not in the position that they are to do the same thing and to feel comfortable as who they are. When you put a name on something, you become a target.
Right.
There was probably 1,000 black people who refused to give up their seat. But who do we look at? Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks.
You understand?
Right.
Who got all the bricks thrown through their window? Mostly was Rosa Parks. Right. Who was targeted in most attacks? Rosa Parks. Right. But there was plenty of black people who refused to give up their seat. But there wasn't a headline about them. Their name wasn't attached to the movement. Right.
And that's for any movement, though.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Any movement. Right.
I mean,
when you're famous and your name, whether the movement made you famous or you were famous before the movement, when you become a part of it, you become a target.
Yeah. There's actually a great Key and Peele skit where Jordan tells they're like in a classroom and Jordan tells a joke to Key, and then Key says the joke out loud, and then everybody thinks it's his joke, so he gets all the fame for the joke. And he's like, no, it's my joke. And they're basically like, sit down, you can't do that, don't try and do that to him. Like, let him have his moment.
Yeah.
And that's history in itself, right?
Right.
Where somebody has done something, but somebody else made it shine.
Right.
And we give that person all the credit. Like Columbus discovering America, which was already here. Like, I mean,
right.
So
yeah. So I mean that's where we are now with this culture where if you say anything about a gay person or a transgender person or whatever, it becomes like this huge, outcry of like, oh, why is he saying that? Why did he call him that or this and this and that? And nobody really gets it because it makes absolute zero sense. And it's so frustrating as a person. You have to walk around on eggshells now because clearly
you can't tell jokes.
You can't even tell a joke.
I mean,
it's not even, listen, if you listen to what he says there was a fella named Bruce Jenner, right?
Right.
Was, as in past tense. Which is an actual fact. Because if anything else, technically, the fella named Bruce Jenner is a was.
Right.
Because now that fella is now whatever the fella
did for you call him Bruce Jenner? He did.
Bruce Jenner?
You did.
That sounds like a superhero, right? Bruce Jenner.
What time was that? That was
He's gonna go back and check the transcript.
Yeah. I might have. That should be his name.
I got mad at Kevin Hart. I got mad at Kevin Hart for not hosting the Oscars because he went back and he apologized for a quote he made.
Yeah, like 10 years ago or something.
It's the cancel culture, Dave. Obama. I didn't get a chance to see Obama's thing about it this week, but Obama talked about it. Dave Chappelle talked about it in his latest thing. You're holding people. Hey, I was funny because like I don't really use Instagram, and I actually forgot I had it. So I went back and I looked at my Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Before I started using it again, and I actually went and deleted some stuff.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can't believe I said these jokes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And they were probably funny to me at the time.
Right.
But I could see how like if somebody like read all of that, they would think that I'm somebody who I'm not.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But they were jokes that were written or memes that were written that were funny at the time, and now I'm like, I don't think that's as funny. But that was 7 years ago. And 7 years ago, that was funny to me.
Right.
So what was funny to a comedian 7 years ago, 7 minutes ago, may not be funny to them now, right? And but part of the world is still laughing at those. Right?
Yeah.
There are people who have only known Kevin Hart for the last 3 or 4 years. They go to YouTube or iTunes and get some of his older stuff, and they're like, damn, that's funny.
Right.
He's going to hit his kid over the head with a dollhouse.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like, who's he offending?
Right.
And this we talked about this last week. For every one person you offend, there's somebody you don't offend that thinks it's funny.
Yeah.
So you can't try and walk this line here.
Yeah.
It's not fair to anybody.
At some point, anything you say could be offensive to somebody. I mean, you could me and you could talk about how delicious McDonald's is, right? We could be like, oh man, I love the Big Mac. I've been a fan of the Big Mac forever. I can't wait till that McRib come back.
Y'all so nasty. That's a gross thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Why are you trying to get people to eat
iceberg lettuce
fake
and not kale?
Food? It's not even real food, and you know how many cows are being slaughtered, and you know what I mean. Like it gets to a point where the social media has given people a voice that is sometimes too loud. Everybody should have a voice. Everybody has a voice. We should be able to use that voice. But there's a time and a place for it.
Exactly.
We have to understand when somebody has gone too far, when somebody is doing something that's completely inappropriate, and when something that I learned a long time ago is that you have to understand when people are allowed to do things.
Right.
There was an artist I talked to, and he's kind of a famous artist, and of course he posts his work on social media. A lot of his comments are positive, but a lot of people, and a lot of times even other artists, are like, man, that sucks. That's terrible. That's garbage. And he gets all these like terrible like comments and stuff, right? And I was like, how do you deal with that? And he said, and it's simple, man. They're allowed to do that. And that was the end of it. Right. He said they're allowed to do it. And you have to understand that, look, people are allowed to do stuff, right? I don't have to go off about how I don't or do or how I love something or how I hate something. If I'm watching something on TV and I don't like it, you know what I do? I change the channel, right? And if I keep going back to that channel and every time I turn to that channel, there's something on that I just don't like, you know what I do? I just stop going to that channel. I mean, it's that simple. I don't have to call you up and my friends and get on Twitter and then post this big outrage on, oh man, every time you turn on XYZ station, they got this, this stupid stuff on and yada, yada, yada. Like, no, just stop watching the channel. Like, it's simple.
And that's the thing, right? Nobody goes to a comedy show and not know about the comedian, right? If you go to a Louis C.K. show, right, you know what Louis C.K. is talking about,
exactly.
Right? Like, he's been talking about the same stuff in a different way for 20 years. If you go see Dave Chappelle, you know what Chappelle's coming in on.
Right.
If you watch SNL, you know what they're talking about. You can't turn it on or go in the audience and then be like, oh, that's offensive. No, you knew going in it was going to be offensive.
Right.
All right, let's get to the other part of the show. Let's talk about Kanye West. My man, Kanye, you almost had me this week. Kanye had an interview with my man Big Boy over in LA, and he said some things. I was like, man, Kanye's spot on, man. He's got this. Basically, he said Democrats have brainwashed black folks, and I actually see his point here, right?
Right.
And he made some good points. He said the Democrats have brainwashed black folks because they keep telling you, oh, we're giving you welfare. We're giving you food stamps. We're giving you these things that you need. When in reality, we didn't need those things, but they told us we could have them, so we wanted them.
Yeah.
And he also talks about the fact that he's got cancel culture because remember, he was the first person to go up on live TV and be like, George Bush hates black people.
Right.
He's like, the fact that he's black doesn't mean that he has to vote Democrat.
Right.
And the fact that black people in general in this country think because they're black, they have to vote Democrat.
Right.
And I was like, he's right.
Yeah.
And people are going to go in on me right now, and that's fine. We had two black Cummings and Conyers both passed away this year in the last couple weeks here, U.S. congressmen. And as much as I feel bad for their families, I think it's a good step for the country. These guys have been in office over 30 years.
Yeah.
I cannot stand the Congressional Black Caucus because you don't do anything for black people except stand on the court and go, we're black. Maxine Waters, sit your ass down. I'm tired of all these 75-year-old black people trying to tell the rest of the black people that they're with them, but they've made $20 million over their career in politics, and they're still voting with big interest groups.
And that's a problem, not just for black people to be there, because there's white people that have been there just as long. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. But the difference is,
the problem
with the Black Caucus is that, hey, we're black, we're for you.
No.
In reality, you're not doing anything to help us.
And that's part of that's my beef with our whole congressional system right now.
Right.
Is that people are allowed to be there for 30 years. The president can only be there for 8.
Right.
Right? So 30 years is way too long because granted that gives you in your 30th year, 29 years of experience doing this job, but at some point, what have you accomplished? Nothing. At some point, there has to be, okay, let me move on and put somebody in who can be a little more productive. Can we get some younger people in office? You understand? Like some people who are to say like, look, I only got like maybe 10, 15 more years of life. Like, can we get some of them people out of the office and put in some people who might be around for 50 more years? Well, they can do 10 years in the Congress or whatever it may be, then pass the torch to someone else.
We need term limits so bad right now.
100%.
I honestly, these guys should be glad that I don't have $30 million because I would just start a campaign about vote them out. I don't care who it is.
Yeah.
Anybody that's been in office more than 2 years, got to go.
Yeah.
Because you haven't done anything. All you've done is sat there and argued back and forth. And having this two-party system of Democrat and Republican, we should be far beyond that.
I feel like that's the worst part of politics in this country is that we have a two-party system. And the simplest way to explain why this is so terrible is because you're basically given an option of heads or tails.
Right.
And when you look at the last two people who Trump and Clinton, if you ask anyone just on the surface, if you took them and just one person individually, right? And you looked at Trump and said, do you want this guy to be president? There's like 4 people who would say, yes, that's a good idea, right? Same thing if you just took Hillary and said, do you want this woman to be president? Most people, no, I don't want her to be president.
She was way too polarized.
But when you put them two together and say, now you have to pick one of these people, most people are like, well, I don't really like either one, but I'm going to vote for one because I hate the other one more than I hate this one I'm voting for, right? Yep. Now, there are some people who are going to say, yes, these are the pros of Trump. These are the pros of Hillary. This is what they bring to the table, so that's what I'm going to vote on. But at the end of the day, there has to be how many people are in this country? 300 million?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There has to be another person who could do this job better. But because of money, because of politics, because of the way we weeded out all the other candidates who we could have threw a rock and hit one and they would have been better than either one of these people, we were forced to choose between one of those two people. Our system is flawed. It has to be fixed. in this flawed system, like you were saying, there was a congressional black caucus in this system. Most of these people who run this caucus are old. They were around basically when Martin Luther King was around.
And they haven't done anything since they walked with Martin Luther King.
Exactly.
You won an election because you walked with Martin Luther King.
And here's the thing. I respect what they've done. I'm not trying to make light of any of their sacrifices in their, you understand what I'm saying? Right. Like I want them to be respected and known for what they've done. But we have to understand, look, man, your time has come and it's gone now. We need a fresh face here. We need fresh eyes here. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like we need somebody to see things a little bit different or better, right?
Vote them all out. Mitch McConnell's been, this is great. Before Mitch McConnell joined Congress, he was worth $290,000. Now he's worth $29 million, and he's got a $174,000 a year job. I don't know how that happens. And he's not the only one. He's just the one that I've seen the numbers on recently. And yes, there are plenty on the Democratic side that do that, and it's on both sides. Yeah. I understand that. That's all the more reason we should vote them all out.
Right.
Just like, it sounds crazy and maybe it's a little scary, but we need to just start over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you've seen businesses before be like, you know what? Hell, who was the major league team that just scrapped their entire front office this week? They're like, you know what? This isn't working. Everybody in the front office is fired. That's what we need to fire the front office. You know, And I've been watching a lot of the Democratic debates, and because I don't feel like anybody's going to challenge Trump on the Republican side, though I think somebody should. At first, I was for your boy from Texas. Then he went and was like, no, we're going to take away all your guns. And I was like, you idiot. You just lost any. Because even people on the far left don't think we should take away guns. That's not what people don't want you to take away their guns. Even people on the left don't want you to take away the guns. What they want you to do is hold it to a higher standard to get a gun, and gun violence crimes should be held to an extreme standard. What you should do with gun crimes should be like you did on the war on drugs, right? You get a guy with a dime bag of weed, oh, you're going to jail for 10 years. You get a guy with an illegal gun, it's 15-year max or minimum. You know what I mean? Like, make those type of laws, make it
right.
And we know what's going on in Chicago. We know they have the toughest gun laws in the country, but things get pleaded down. Let's take, like like in the war on drugs, you took those things off the table. You couldn't plead those down. Take those things off the table with the war on, I don't want to call it the war on guns because it sounds stupid. But with those issues. But saying that you're coming to take people's guns is ridiculous. If the election were to held today, I think I would vote for Andrew Yang, only because he seems to talk the most common sense to me. Like, it just seems like And when I listen to him talk, I'm like, how come other politicians don't just talk normal, right? Yeah. They just, like, he talks normal to me.
Well, that was something that I hit on a lot in the past probably 10 years, right? Which is, listen to how people talk to you. Listen to how people talk about you. Listen to how people talk about people who look and act and live similar to you. Because that will tell you more than any policy or anything else. Look how they act around people who are like you, right? That will tell you more than anything else. When I see someone and every time they speak, it sounds like a prepared speech, I no longer want to hear them. I want to know, do you got real problems, bro?
No. I want to hear Donald Trump's prepared speches.
Because him being the exception of because him going off the top of the head is
he can't read a monitor, and then when he gets flustered, he just starts talking. Yeah, and it's the greatest thing in the world.
That's just comedy gold. But it's one of those things where the funniest thing is, like, we get on this talking about Kanye, and there's one part of me that wants to say, Kanye West is a person who at this moment in time is being real to himself, right? He's having these moments, like even going back to when he was on, I don't know what talk show it was. It might have been Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon. I can't remember. And they asked him a question and he kind of paused, right? And it was a big deal because they went to commercial break before he could answer the question. And then, of course, like 2 or 3 days later, he came out and he was like, well, he asked me a question and I didn't have an answer right away. I need to stop and think about my answer.
Right.
And I thought that was more genuine than anything else, because how many times do we get people who just spot off the first thing that comes to their mind And this man was like, you know what? I need to stop and think about how I'm going to answer this question. I can respect that a lot in a person. And a lot of the things he's been doing lately seems like a person who's like, you know what? This is how I feel. And I want to say how I feel. And he's allowed to change his mind and do different things because we as humans, we do this stuff all the time. And we're not used to a public figure acting like Kanye, right?
And and sometimes we don't have all the information, right?
Right.
Sometimes we form an opinion based on the information that we have at the time.
Right. Which is usually like 20% of the information. Right. It's not all of it.
And then you get another 20% and now your opinion changes, right?
Yeah.
But then you get another 10% and your opinion might go back to the same way or somewhere in the middle.
Right.
So it's okay for people to change their mind.
Right.
Right. As Muhammad Ali says, that the man who views life the same at 50 as he did at 20 has wasted 30 years of his life.
Right.
Because you build on experience and that's what changes your mind and formulates your opinions.
Right.
So we shouldn't be mad at people when they change their mind.
Right.
Because I change my mind all the time.
Yeah, of course.
You know? It's Halloween today. I've changed my mind 6 times about what I'm going to be for what costume I'm going to wear today.
Right.
No. So like, I actually have more, like you said, more respect for people who are like, you know what? Let me think about this for a minute. Than the guy who just says the next thing that comes off the top of his head.
Right.
And I feel like, and I'm not like trying to push Andrew Yang down everybody, but like, again, like, I feel like when I've watched these debates and stuff, like, I feel like he's the only person that just doesn't have all the cue cards. Like, he's just like, real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we might find out in 3 months that he has a horrid past and
of course.
this guy belongs in prison and not. Right. So like, I don't know, but I don't know what happened to common sense in this country. Like, right. Like or common decency even. Like we just don't treat each other.
It's there. I don't even think there's a real answer. I mean, throughout time, cultures evolve, people evolve. What was okay in the 80s is not okay now. Right. And I say that because I was born in 1980, and from the time I was born as a kid, the things that like the way my parents talked to me, not necessarily like things they said to me or about me, but just the way that they talked in general is not in a sense acceptable now because we said things and did things in a different way, right?
But see, I'm glad you brought that up because why isn't it acceptable now, right? Like, when we were actually going to do a show this week, but there's so much information that we still have to shift through about whether or not the world is safer, or more dangerous than it was when we were kids,
right?
Because we hear about all these child abductions and stuff like that, and when we were kids, our parents talked to us a certain way, right? You don't talk to strangers, you don't do this,
exactly,
right? Like there were just basic life protocols that you didn't do. Right. It's weird because I thought we were going to do that show this week, I started doing research and we were talking about, are there more abductions now than there were when we were kids? And the answer is no.
Right.
Like the number's higher, but when you consider the amount of people that are in the United States,
right? So
it's the actual percentage, is about the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Than it was back then.
Yeah.
Like, but we're in such a information society,
right?
Quick news society that we see all the stuff on Facebook and on the Amber Alerts and all this stuff.
Right.
And you're like, oh my God, this is so bad. It's going on and going on. And the answer is no, it's always quite been like this. The mass shooting, like, and it's funny because this isn't funny, but it's kind of ironic because like we give all this credence to mass shootings now, and there are a lot more of those than there were before.
Right.
But they were there before. But remember, we called them going postal.
Right.
Because they started at the post office.
Exactly.
The first, 6 or 7 of them were postal workers getting mad or getting fired, walking back in and shooting up everybody at the job. So we've been through this for a very long time.
Right.
It's just because that is becoming more and more prevalent, but it's not something new. I mean, I said going postal to a millennial the other day and they looked at me like, what are you talking about? Because to them, it's mass shooting. But this has been going on for as long as I can remember. Right. But because of today's availability of information, it seems like it's a lot more. the amount of stranger abductions in this country isn't really anymore. Most Amber Alerts are from like a kidnapping from a father taking the child away from the mother taking the child away from the father. Like it's what they call known abductors.
Right.
You know, it's not like a stranger abduction.
Like a kid comes up missing in a park, somebody snatched her. Yeah.
But I'm saying that because the way our parents talk is you said it's not okay now, but like especially my stepfather was very strict about certain things, but those things were for my safety.
Right. Well, what I mean is like, so I got whoopings growing up, right?
Right.
And now it's child abuse, right? So by today's standard, the whoopings I got, my parents should be in jail for. Right. You know what I mean? So it's little things like that. But then you have other things as far as like technological changes. So when my parents were growing up, going to college made perfect sense. You go to school, you go to high school, you go to college, you get a good job. Today, that's not really the best path for everybody. There are so many other options, especially with technology changing, with social media and just the way that we interact with people. There are plenty of things you can do to make a good living or start a business or whatever you want to do without taking that exact same path.
I have a friend who's a cybersecurity guy.
Yeah.
Everything he learned off the internet.
Right. You see what I'm saying?
He didn't go to college for cybersecurity.
So yeah,
he learned everything he needed to know off the internet. Went and got a job in an entry-level position. Now he makes like $270,000 a year.
I learned how to build websites by watching YouTube videos.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I never went. I went to college for graphic design, but when I went to college, computers were just now starting to use Photoshop. So we learned I had Photoshop 1.5, right? And it was super slow, and it was kind of like, this is pointless. We still did everything on tracing paper with copy machines and, markers and everything else. That's how I learned how to do graphic design. So everything I know how to do, I do everything digital now. And I had to learn from Apple University, YouTube, just meeting people who have Photoshop and learning stuff. And now I use completely different programs. All I learned without going to college again, right? Life is just different now, right? So the things that my parents taught me growing up were things that they learned, right? So that they grew up in a world that was completely different than the world that I grew up in. My kids are going to grow up in a world, even right at this moment, is not the same earth that I grew up in, right? There were no cell phones when I was growing up. I kept a quarter in my shoe so I could use a payphone if something happened, right? Like my parents made sure I had a quarter in my shoe. Yeah. Now my 9-year-old daughter has a cell phone. So if she goes somewhere, keep this so I can get in contact with you, right? The world we live in is completely different now. So with that being said, we live in a completely different world, but we still have the same congressmen who've been in office before I was even born.
Think about that, right?
You see what I'm saying? The same people who are in control of this country.
Going back to the Alabama abortion issue, because it's going to go back in front of the Supreme Court, even though we've already had Roe versus Wade as a decision. And if you say that Roe versus Wade is antiquated and we need to take this back before the Supreme Court, okay, I'll give you that. That's fine. But then if you're going to continually take things back to the Supreme Court, because it's antiquated, then you have to go back to the Constitution and change that, because it was written 400 years ago and it makes no damn sense for now.
There's so many things in the Constitution, of course, when you read it, doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? And this was something that I try to explain to people. The Constitution was written by people who just liberated a country themselves, basically, right? They went to war. They had to fight for their freedom. And then they wrote this Constitution basically saying, look, we need to ensure that we never be in the situation we were just in. And that's what the Constitution is, basically. And it's 400 years old. And as much as I agree with most of it, and I think a lot of it is great, there are a lot of things in it, especially as a black person, that I'm just like, wait a minute. Which one of y'all racist granddaddies wrote this? Because this is terrible. And yeah,
women should feel the same way. Because women weren't even in consideration when they wrote the Constitution. Like they were like, oh, we don't have to talk about them. Like in the Constitution. Like if you say that we need to take things back to the Supreme Court because the world is different and things have changed. But the Supreme Court is based on the Constitution. So you have to go back and change the Constitution to make it more according to times, because there were no AR-15s, there were no satellites, there were no drones, none of this stuff existed. And not only did it not exist, there's no way in hell you could have foreseen it coming, right?
Right.
We foreseen flying cars because it was cartoons, but you never thought, well, that's actually going to happen, right? That's that's just the Jetsons.
Right.
And then movies started doing it, and they kept doing it. So now it's in the back of your head. Well, okay, that might be true. Why not one day? Right. But in reality, are we ever going to see plane? Not while we're here.
Nah.
You know what I mean? We're trying to get to the cars they can drive themselves first. You know?
Right. I always thought whenever I saw like a movie with flying cars, I'm like, how do they stop? Like, planes don't stop. Like, you know what I mean? They have to land first. Like, how these cars are stopping? Like,
so you can only land in certain spots. Like,
right. Yeah, dude. Like, traffic control is already a mess. Like, you want to throw like 1,000 more cars. Have you seen the highways lately? Like, you want to trust these people with flying vehicles?
Yeah.
You don't have a car in your living room,
speaking
bro.
of the Constitution, we have we were told it was unconstitutional when California decided that this is one of those braggadocious stuff, because we were on this way before the rest of the nation, and then they got on it and they kind of went with it. But we were talking about this like 2 or 3 weeks before the rest of the nation. California went and said, "Hey, you can't lose your scholarship for marketing yourself, essentially, right? You're allowed to take money for your image."
Right.
NCAA was like, "No, that's unconstitutional. We're going to fight this."
Yeah.
Yesterday they came out with, "No, we're going to allow you to make money off your likeness and image."
Yeah.
Here's the catcher: as long as it doesn't conflict with the collegiate model.
Yeah. See, so here's the thing: like, you read the headline, right? And it's, NCAA is allowing these athletes to get paid. And my first thought was, yes, finally. Like, they finally woke up. And then my very next thought, like, I was like, wait a minute, man. Like, a couple months ago, they said this was unconstitutional. This is the NCAA we talking about. Man, I don't trust them. Like, if there's anybody to not be trusted, it's the NCAA. And I really feel I don't believe them. I think they're going to do something, but I feel like this statement is buying them time to find a way that they can make more money off of these athletes.
Of course it is.
Or something of that nature. I don't think that they're just going to open up the gates and be like, you know what, you guys can get paid, and as long as you got receipts, it'll be all good. Like, I don't think that's what's going to happen.
So Jay Billis of ESPN actually did a very good segment about this yesterday. And he was talking about 2 things. The first problem is the collegiate model. He's like, there's no definition of the collegiate model. So anything that you do, they can say is outside the collegiate model. He says it's a made-up term made up by some guy who was the head of the NCAA because they didn't want to have to pay workman's comp for student athletes.
Right.
So they came up with the term student athletes and then collegiate model.
Right.
So he's like, we don't even know what the collegiate model is.
Yeah.
And he was like, basically, they're trying to buy time to figure out how they're going to scam. Because what happened was, so there's 2 congressmen, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, that are going after the NCAA right now, right, because of this.
Okay.
And they're introducing legislation for this, on a federal level.
Yeah.
So the NCAA made this announcement yesterday. Then they went to those congressmen and were like, hey, we changed our mind. Can you pull back your legislation? And they were like, nah, bro, don't work like that.
Yeah.
See,
good.
They were trying to pull an end around to a situation. This is like for years I've said the NCAA has to go away, and the only way it's going to go away is when a conference like the Big Ten, SEC, one of these conferences has got to be like, we don't need you anymore. We're going to stop paying you money. You're really not doing anything to help us,
right?
Because we don't obviously. We know you're not monitoring those schools because we see all the stuff. Hell, we had an entire federal investigation of college basketball coaches, and the NCAA still didn't do anything about it. You know what I mean? Like the feds arrested people. The NCAA didn't hand out any suspensions or anything like that. So, what are you doing for us?
I'm looking at this like, imagine you're about to get into a fight, right? Like you're in a bar, okay, and guy bumps into you. And you get up and push him, and he pushes you. And right before you punch him in the face, he goes, wait. I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean that. My bad. You're all good. And you put your guard down. He puts his hands in his pockets, and you know what he's got in his pocket? Brass knuckles. That's the NCAA. That's what they're doing right now. Like, they've just said, you know what, guys? You know what? We're going to give in. You guys, you win. And I feel like right now they're putting on the brass knuckles. They're buying that time, and they're preparing a sucker punch.
Right.
That's how I feel about the NCAA. I don't think that they're about to do anything that's going to be really great for these students. Anything that they put out that will allow students to get paid is going to come with a stipulation. And as much as I want the headline of what they said to be true, which is that they'll allow these athletes to get paid off their likeness and, you know, their numbers and names and all that being used, I think that would be great. It would be fantastic. It shouldn't violate any lines anyway, because it's technically the students having a job and earning income outside of college sports, basically. And it should already be allowed, which is why the Congress and everybody else is starting to step in and make some stuff happen. So one thing California has done right in the past 100 years is start this process, but I don't believe anything the NCAA has to say. I 100% believe that they're about to do something real shady, probably shadier than what they've been doing, which is forcing these kids into slavery. But yeah,
I'm trying to find his name, because there was one idiot congressman, I think he was out of Kentucky, that said they should. Do you know his name, Quan? The guy that said they should tax scholarships now.
Oh, I read that. What is it?
I can't find his name. So, you're gonna tax scholarships. It's like taxing a welfare check. Isn't it?
Richard Burr, Senator Richard Burr.
Yes, yeah. I knew it started with a B.
Yeah.
Is he from Kentucky?
Let me see.
I know he's a Republican.
Right yeah.
So his idea is that you need to tax these scholarships that these athletes get. The problem is, he's talking about scholarships that athletes get. Are you going to do the same thing to the girl who has a 5.0 coming out of high school and gets a full academic scholarship?
And see, and that's the beef with the NCAA right there, because that girl can go out and do all the things that these athletes cannot do.
She can get a job.
And she got exactly.
She can go work at McDonald's, Burger King. If she can find an office building, get an internship where they pay her, she can do all that.
She can do all kinds of stuff. Exactly.
And why can student athletes not do that? Because of the NCAA.
Exactly.
So growing up, I had a friend of mine that played two sports, and it was the weirdest thing. So he could play baseball, and this was in the 90s, so I'm pretty sure the rules have changed by now. He signed a minor league deal with the Florida Marlins.
Yeah.
So he's a professional athlete now.
Right.
But because it was baseball and a minor league deal, he could also accept his NCAA basketball scholarship.
Wow. See, that's...
But here,
yeah,
if he had signed with a minor league basketball team that was being played,
yeah,
he wouldn't be able to accept a football scholarship. There's this different rule for baseball players and what they can do, and because they get signing bonuses when they're really young, and you're going to be in the minors for years and stuff like that.
And the reason for that is, and this is probably a shocker to all of you, it comes down to money.
Yes.
Where does their money come from? Where does the NCAA's money come from? And the majority of it, I'm going to say, first place is football, second place has got to be basketball. Right. I can't imagine baseball might even be fourth or fifth. Who knows? But every once in a while, I see College World Series. You know what I mean? On TV.
And that's the thing, though, too, right? About baseball.
Yeah.
Is that it depends on where you're at. If you're on the West Coast, baseball is big. In the Midwest, not so much.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then lacrosse can be a bigger sport in some states than baseball, or swimming or other sports, depending on the schools and stuff like that. So the law that California has would allow any and all of those athletes, right?
Right.
And there's this cry out that the law isn't going to be fair because the guy who starts on the football team, the quarterback's going to make more money than the offensive line. Duh.
Well, yeah.
That's what happens in real life anyway, right?
Yeah,
right?
And this is reality. Here's the thing. All these kids in college are 18 or older.
Right.
So technically they're adults. So are we going to treat them like adults where they can now make a living as an adult? Or are we still going to talk to them like the 12-year-old kids playing pee-wee sports? Like our high school kids who are 15, 16, and 17 who are just, going to school, playing sports, and then afterwards going to hang out with their friends, going home to mama's house. Like,
and the thing is too, like, let's say the basketball kid signs a deal with Nike worth $100,000, right?
Right.
But the woman on the swim team, maybe she doesn't get $100,000 deal from Nike, but maybe she gets $10,000 from Speedo.
Right.
And then like another, she has to wear the Speedo outfit, but her warm up can be Adidas.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So she gets $10,000 from that, but that's still $20,000 that she didn't have access to.
Exactly.
Before.
The point is, if you open this door, you're allowing the students to make a living off of their likeness.
Right.
Because right now, the NCAA is making a living off of their likeness.
Yes.
And that's why I don't trust the NCAA, because what this is going to do...
Sports is paying the NCAA a ton of money.
And not the students.
Right.
And when the students are able to make this money, the NCAA will get cut out, or a chunk of their money will be cut out.
Of course it is.
Right. So that's why they don't like it. And I know for a fact they don't want it. So... Right. The brass knuckles are coming, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's...
But here's the deal. Because of... This is not... I got his name right here, and I just scrolled past it. Mark Walker is the Republican out of North Carolina, and then there's one more Democratic senator who are behind this law. They're not giving up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're like, no, this is going to go through. I don't care really what you do.
Right.
We're going to make sure this is done the way we want it done.
Exactly.
And I'm actually, there are times where I really believe that government should stay out of business. But when the NCAA is the bully, somebody needs to police the bully.
Right.
And if the NCAA wants to be a governing body, and be in control, who watches them?
I always feel like somebody has to always check a governing body.
Right.
Right. If you look at international soccer, the referees in international soccer, there is no governing body over them.
Right. So
when you have these huge games, even like the World Cup, and they make like just an obviously biased call towards a team, there's nobody to check them. They have nobody to answer to. And that can always become a problem, because now you have a huge sport, probably billions of dollars involved, and you have this person who can just decide, you know what, I don't want Team USA to win. Red card to the best player.
Right.
For whatever reason, there can be outrage.
And because there's no flopping ever in soccer, right?
Right. You know what I mean? So
whenever
whenever you have a governing body go unchecked, you start to have things like that, where you start to see.
But then they become bullies, and that's essentially what the NCAA has done to athletes. Is they become bullies.
For years, they've been bullies,
and you're telling them what they can and can't do, where they can and cannot sit, how they can and cannot eat,
right?
And that's about as oppressed as you can be, right?
It's called slavery. It's called slavery.
Yeah, I mean that's it.
Yeah. So here's slavery by definition. You're going to work for me, and I'm going to provide you with food and shelter.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, well, they get an education. Okay, you're going to work for me. I'm going to provide you with food and shelter, and I'm going to give you some books to read.
And I'm going to teach you how to plant. Because everything I teach you, how to pick cotton, that's an education, all right?
Right, exactly.
All right, guys. You didn't have to put the music on. We was about to wrap it up anyway, Fawn. Right. This has been Negro Please. I'm Dallas Scott. That's Hollywood Huff. We'll be back next Thursday at 12 Pacific Standard Time. Thanks for listening, guys.